The forest lay heavy under the silver glow of the moon, mist curling between the trees like ghostly fingers. Every step Elara took crunched softly against fallen leaves, the sound swallowed quickly by the shadows. She had walked this forest many times, but tonight it felt different, haunted, restless, as though the trees themselves were whispering secrets she could not understand. Elara carried her small satchel close, its contents carefully arranged her healing herbs, salves, and bandages. She had always been a healer, though most of the village saw her as strange. Children whispered that she could talk to animals, that the spirits of the forest listened when she sang her soft songs. Elara ignored them. She did not seek approval or fame. She only sought to ease pain, whether human or animal. The air smelled damp and wild. Somewhere in the darkness, a branch snapped. She had learned caution from years alone in the woods, but the instinct was not fear, it was attention. A quiet awareness that the forest demanded from anyone who dared enter its depths at night. And then she saw it. A figure slumped against a tree near the riverbank. Dark fur matted with blood, chest heaving unevenly. Elara's heart clenched. The wolf was barely alive, its amber eyes half closed, dim and shadowed. Her hands itched to move, to help, though every instinct in her told her to be careful. Wolves were dangerous, especially this deep in the forest. Yet something in those eyes, a silent plea, broke through all fear. She knelt beside the wolf, careful to make her movements slow and gentle. "Shh. It's all right. I'm not going to hurt you," she whispered, her voice almost lost in the rustling of leaves. The wolf whimpered softly, and she could see the rise and fall of its chest becoming slightly steadier. Her hands were steady, though her heart beat wildly. She tore strips from her scarf and gently tied them around a deep cut near its shoulder, her fingers trembling as she worked. Every instinct screamed at her that this was madness, that she was risking her life. Yet she could not stop. Not when life was so close to slipping away. Hours passed as she worked by the light of a flickering lantern, applying salves and whispering soothing words. By the time the first hints of dawn touched the sky, the wolf stirred more strongly, its breathing more even, though still weak. Elara's hands were sore, her body aching from the cold, but she allowed herself a small, tired smile. "You'll live," she murmured. "I promise." The wolf's eyes met hers fully for the first time. There was intelligence there, something almost human in the gaze, something that made her pulse quicken and her stomach twist with wonder and caution. And then, as if testing her, the wolf nuzzled her hand gently, a gesture both grateful and wary. The sound of movement behind her made her spin. In the pale morning light, she saw another wolf emerging from the shadows, larger and more imposing, its black fur shining like ink under the weak sun. Its eyes, golden and intense, fixed on her with an unreadable expression. The air seemed to tighten. Elara's breath caught in her throat. The second wolf was massive, a commanding presence that made her feel both small and strangely electrified. He moved with fluid grace, silent and deliberate, until he stopped a few paces away. Studying her and the wounded wolf, she felt his gaze like fire, powerful and unsettling. Who are you?" she whispered to herself, though she knew the wolf could not understand words. The larger wolf growled softly, a low sound vibrating in the air. Not threatening, but warning. Elara's mind raced. She realized, with a chill, that this was the alpha, the leader of the pack. He had come for the one she had saved. But the moment she expected attack, he did not advance. Instead, he circled the injured wolf slowly, his eyes flicking between the brother and her, and she sensed the intelligence behind those golden eyes. This was no ordinary animal. The forest seemed to lean closer, listening. She felt the first stirrings of something strange, something ancient, brushing against her very soul. The alpha wolf stepped closer, his presence immense, almost human in the intensity of the stare. Elara's heart hammered. She did not fully understand what was happening, only that her life had changed in an instant. Something about this wolf was magnetic, commanding, and dangerous all at once. The injured wolf, whom she had come to call Riven, stirred again, nuzzling her hand, as if trying to remind her of their bond. The alpha watched, growl fading into a low, steady rumble that seemed almost contemplative. Elara could not tear her eyes away from him, even as fear and awe battled within her. I only helped him," she said softly, unsure why she felt the need to explain herself. Her voice carried in the quiet morning, honest and trembling. The alpha's gaze remained fixed, unwavering. And for a moment, Elara felt as if he could see inside her very soul, weighing her, measuring her worth. Then he tilted his massive head, a movement, slow and deliberate, and something in that gesture made her stomach twist. It was neither threat nor friendliness, it was ownership. Elara swallowed hard. She had heard the stories, whispers from villagers about the wolves in the forest. Wolves that were bound to the old magic of the land. Wolves that were more than just beasts. But she had never believed them, not fully. Now, standing face to face with the alpha, she understood the truth. There was power here beyond anything she had known, and she had stepped into it by saving Riven. She glanced at Riven. The smaller wolf's head rested against her knee, his amber eyes, bright but weary. She felt an unexpected pang of protectiveness. She had saved him, and she would not abandon him, no matter the consequences. The alpha wolf took a slow step closer. Elara felt the weight of his presence, the power of the pack radiating from him like a tangible force. She could feel her heart racing, part fear, part awe, part something she could not name. There was a pull between them, a tension as old as the forest itself. Then, as if testing her, the alpha lowered his massive head and pressed it lightly to Riven's side, a gesture of acknowledgement. Riven growled softly, but not in defiance, more like recognition. Relief. Elara's breath caught. She realized in that moment that she had not only saved Riven's life but also placed herself within the delicate balance of the pack's power. And the alpha Kalen, she decided to call him in her mind, was deciding her fate. For the rest of the morning, she worked quietly, tending to Riven, while keeping an eye on Kalen. He did not leave. He followed her movements with precision, silent yet commanding, as though every motion she made was of consequence. By midday, the mist began to lift, and the forest grew brighter. Birds stirred in the trees, and the normal rhythm of life returned slowly. Yet Kalen did not move, and Elara could feel the tension in the air, the unspoken rules of the pack pressing down on her. "Why? Why are you here?" she whispered to Kalen again, though she knew he could not understand. It was not the words that mattered. It was the courage to speak, the assertion of her presence. Kalen's eyes softened for a moment, just enough for her to glimpse the depth behind them. Centuries of loyalty, responsibility, and an unyielding pride. And then, as quickly as it appeared, the softness vanished, replaced by that piercing, unwavering stare that left her trembling. Elara understood then that this forest, this pack, and this alpha were bound together by ancient laws she barely understood. And by saving Riven, she had stepped across a threshold from which there was no turning back. The moment she reached to gather her herbs, Kalen stepped closer, his movement fluid, silent, inevitable. Elara's breath caught. He was close enough now that she could feel the heat of his body, the power contained within him. "You've saved him," she whispered aloud, barely realizing she spoke to him. But now, what happens? For a heartbeat, the forest was silent, as if waiting for an answer. Then Kalen pressed his massive forehead to hers, a gesture that sent shivers through her spine. It was not threatening, but it was not gentle either. It was a claim. unmistakable and undeniable. Elara stumbled back slightly, heart racing, mind spinning. The air around them felt alive with magic, with destiny, with forces she could not name but could feel pressing against her. She knew that nothing would ever be the same. She had saved a life, but in doing so, she had invited a power far greater than herself into her life. And from the depths of Kaelin's golden eyes, she felt the truth settle like a stone in her chest. She had entered a world she could not escape. The sun rose higher, casting long shadows across the forest floor. Riven stirred, looking at her with quiet trust. Kaelin's gaze never wavered, and Elara, trembling yet resolute, understood that the choice before her was not simple. The bond she had forged with one wolf had drawn her into the orbit of another, far more powerful, far more dangerous. She felt the first stirrings of fear, awe, and something else she did not yet understand. Cliffhanger. As she turned to retreat to her cabin, thinking to gather strength and knowledge, Kaelin stepped fully into the clearing, his massive form blocking the path. The forest seemed to hold its breath, and his eyes glowed in the morning light. He spoke, voice low but clear, almost human in its resonance. "You've saved him. Now you belong to me." Elara froze, the weight of his words pressing down on her like the ancient trees themselves. The forest whispered, the wind shivered, and she realized she had crossed a threshold from which there was no return. The forest was quiet, but not still. Even in the absence of the night's mist, a tense energy lingered in the air, thick and heavy, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. Elara's mind raced as she stared at Kaelin, the alpha wolf, whose golden eyes seemed to pierce through every layer of her being. "You belong to me," Kaelin's voice had said, low and commanding, echoing in her ears as if the words were both a warning and a promise. She had fled that first moment, retreating to the edge of the clearing. But the alpha did not follow. Instead, he watched her, his presence looming, like a shadow that could not be shaken. Elara clutched her cloak, trying to steady her trembling hands. Her mind spun with questions. Belong to him? How could that be? I only saved his brother. Yet deep down, beneath the fear, there was a strange pull. A magnetic force that drew her gaze back to him, again and again. Riven stirred beside her, his amber eyes calm but alert. He nuzzled her leg gently, a reminder that her bond with him had not weakened. And yet, as much as Riven trusted her, Kaelin's gaze left her unsettled. There was power in that wolf, ancient and undeniable, and a sense of destiny that made her heart pound. Kaelin stepped forward, his massive form moving with silent grace. Each step was deliberate, measured, a demonstration of control that made Elara's stomach tighten. She wanted to step back, to flee into the safety of the village, but something in her chest held her in place. Curiosity, fear, perhaps even a spark of fascination. "You saved him," Kaelin said finally, his voice steady, almost human in its cadence. "You risked yourself for one of my bloodline. That does not go unnoticed. But understand this. To save one of us is to become part of us. There is no turning back." Elara swallowed hard. The words carried weight she could almost feel pressing into her bones. She had never believed in legends, in whispers of ancient laws binding humans and wolves together. And yet now, faced with Kaelin, she realized there was truth in the old stories. I don't understand," she said softly. "I only healed him. That was all. I didn't mean to." "You meant to save," Kaelin interrupted gently but firmly. "That is enough. You have shown courage, skill, and compassion. The pack respects that. But I am the alpha, and the alpha decides who may stay in our forest and who may leave." Elara felt a shiver run down her spine. Her pulse quickened as the implications of his words settled over her. She was no longer merely a healer in a quiet village. She was now part of something far greater, far more dangerous. Her choices no longer belonged entirely to her. Riven stirred, nudging her hand, and she felt his loyalty. He trusted her completely, yet she sensed he also understood the significance of Kaelin's presence. He was the Alpha, the one who held the power of life and death over the pack. And somehow, saving Riven had bound her to this wolf, whether she wanted it or not. Over the next days, the tension between human and wolves grew. Kaelin watched her, silent and unyielding, as she moved through the forest, gathering herbs and tending to wounded creatures. His presence was constant, a shadow at the edge of her vision, a reminder that she was no longer alone. Ilara tried to keep her distance, moving carefully, speaking softly to the animals she healed. But Kaelin's influence was pervasive. She noticed it in the way the wind seemed to shift around him, in the rustle of leaves that followed his approach. The forest itself seemed to bend toward him, as if acknowledging his authority. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the forest was bathed in twilight, Kaelin approached her fully. His massive form moved silently, yet every step seemed to shake the ground beneath her. She froze, hands clutching the basket of herbs she had gathered. "Why do you linger here?" she asked cautiously, her voice barely above a whisper. Kaelin's golden eyes met hers, unblinking. "Because you are part of this now," he said. "Because the bond you have formed with Riven is sacred, and the bond you will form with me is inevitable." Ilara's heart skipped a beat. She wanted to step back, to retreat to safety, but something rooted her in place. There was a pull she could not resist, a strange mixture of fear and fascination that left her breathless. She could not deny the magnetic force Kaelin seemed to exert over her, nor the way the forest itself seemed to acknowledge his claim. Riven whined softly, nudging her hand, and Ilara felt a pang of guilt. She cared for him, yes, but now she could not ignore the truth. Kaelin was the Alpha, the one who controlled the forest, the one who would not allow her to leave freely. "You do not understand," she said finally, trying to find strength in her voice. "I am only a healer. I do not belong to your world." Kaelin tilted his head, studying her. "Belonging is not always about choice," he said. "Sometimes it is about destiny. You have crossed a threshold, Ilara, and the forest has accepted you. The pack has accepted you. I have accepted you. That is enough to bind you." The weight of his words pressed upon her. She felt the pulse of the forest, the quiet hum of the ancient magic that wrapped around the trees and rivers and creatures of the woods. It was alive, watching, aware, and somehow, she was now part of it. Over the following days, Kaelin observed her with quiet intensity, teaching her the ways of the forest without speaking directly. She learned to move without disturbing the creatures, to sense the subtle signs of danger, to understand the silent language of the wolves. She felt the pull of the pack's magic, a rhythm that seemed to echo in her very soul. Riven grew stronger, his wounds healing under her care, yet he was never far from Kaelin's side. The bond between the two wolves was undeniable, a mix of loyalty and reverence. And Ilara felt both awe and fear as she watched them interact. One night, under the light of the full moon, Kaelin approached her at the edge of the clearing. His fur gleamed silver under the moonlight, and his eyes held a depth that left her breathless. "You have done well," he said quietly. "You have healed, learned, and endured. But now comes the test of your spirit. The forest is not kind to those who hesitate. You must prove your courage, your wisdom, and your loyalty, not just to me, but to the pack and to yourself." Ilara's stomach twisted. She had faced dangers before, yes, but nothing like this. She had not realized that saving Riven would place her in the center of a force far older and stronger than she could have imagined. What must I do?" she asked softly, fear and determination mingling in her voice. Kalen's gaze softened slightly, though the intensity never left him. You will face the darkness that stalks this forest. You will be tested, and you will be watched. Only by proving your heart and mind can you earn your place here, among us, and by my side. Elara nodded, determination settling over her fear. She had saved Riven. Yes. But now she understood that her actions had consequences she could not ignore. She had stepped into a world of power and magic, a world that demanded respect and courage. The first trial came sooner than she expected. A storm swept through the forest, lightning striking ancient trees, wind tearing through the branches. Creatures fled, seeking shelter, and Elara found herself alone with Riven as the storm raged. She struggled to keep the smaller wolf calm, her hands working quickly to protect him from the rain and the cold. From the shadows, Kalen watched, silent and unyielding, his golden eyes fixed on her. He did not interfere, though she could feel his presence like a weight pressing on her shoulders. She realized then that this was the first test not of skill, but of resilience, courage, and the strength of her heart. Hours passed, and the storm did not relent. Yet Elara continued her work, her focus unwavering, even as exhaustion threatened to overtake her. She could feel the forest's energy humming around her, alive and aware. And she understood that every action mattered. Every decision, every act of care, was observed and weighed. Finally, the storm began to subside. The first rays of dawn pierced the clouds, illuminating the forest with a pale, golden light. Riven was safe, curled beside her, and Kalen stepped forward at last. His eyes held a quiet approval, and for the first time, Elara saw something almost tender in his gaze. You have endured, he said softly. You have proven yourself, but this is only the beginning. There is more to learn, more to face, and one day, you will have to make a choice not just for yourself, but for the pack, for Riven, and for me. Elara's heart pounded. She understood now the depth of the bond she had entered, the power and danger of the forest, and the strength of the alpha who claimed her. She had saved a life, yes, but she had also stepped into a destiny far greater than her own understanding. Cliffhanger. As Kalen turned and disappeared into the forest, leaving her alone with Riven, a chill wind swept through the trees. The shadows seemed to twist and move, with a life of their own. Elara shivered, sensing a presence lurking deeper in the woods, a darkness that had watched her trials and was now preparing to confront her. She pressed a hand to her chest, feeling her heartbeat in the quiet morning. The forest held secrets she could not yet name, and the bonds she had formed with Riven and Kalen would be tested in ways she could not imagine. The path ahead was dangerous, uncertain, and filled with power she could barely comprehend. And yet, deep in her heart, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She could not turn back. Not now. Not ever. The forest was quiet as dawn broke, the light spilling through the trees in soft beams that danced across the moss-covered ground. Elara had not slept. Her mind was alive with memories of the storm, Kalen's watchful eyes, and the mysterious pull she felt toward both wolves. Riven lay close beside her, his amber eyes observing her, steady and loyal. Yet her thoughts kept drifting to Kalen, the alpha whose presence had come to dominate the forest and her life. Elara rose carefully, moving through the forest with practiced grace. She gathered herbs, checked the streams for safe drinking water, and tended to small, injured creatures she encountered. The forest seemed calmer now, almost reverent. Yet the air carried an unspoken tension. She knew Kalen was watching, even if she could not see him. Her own heart trembled with the awareness of the bond she had entered. Saving Riven had done more than preserve a life. It had drawn her into a world of ancient rules, and mystical power. Every step she took reminded her that the wolves were not ordinary, that Kalen's claim was more than a threat, it was destiny itself. By midday, Kalen emerged from the shadows, as silent and commanding as ever. His golden eyes locked on hers, unwavering and intense. Riven nuzzled her hand before rising to his feet, but Kalen's presence overshadowed everything. "You have learned much," Kalen said, his voice low but resonant. "Yet the true trial has not yet come. Courage alone is not enough. You must prove the strength of your heart, the depth of your loyalty, and the wisdom of your choices." Elara swallowed hard. "I will do my best," she whispered, though she did not know what awaited her. The forest held secrets she had not yet uncovered, shadows and dangers that she could not predict. Kalen's gaze softened for a moment, the first flicker of warmth she had seen in him. "I do not demand blind obedience," he said. "I demand understanding, respect, and bravery. The forest tests all who enter it. You are no exception." The first trial came swiftly. From the edge of the trees, dark shapes moved with unnatural speed and silence. Shadowy figures, creatures of an ancient magic, emerged, intent on challenging the pack and testing Elara. She froze, heart pounding, but then Riven stepped forward, growling low and protective. Kalen appeared at her side, his presence a force of authority that made the shadows hesitate. Elara's instincts took over. She guided Riven in swift movements, calming him when he hesitated, keeping both of them safe from the advancing shadows. The forest seemed to respond to her actions. The wind shifted, leaves rustled, and the shadows wavered, unable to harm her. Kalen's voice broke through the tension. "Use what you have learned. Trust your bond with Riven, and with me. Trust yourself." Elara nodded, taking a deep breath. She focused, her hands moving quickly as she applied herbs to minor wounds and whispered calming words to the frightened creatures of the shadows. Slowly, the shadows receded, dissolving into the mist as if acknowledging her strength. When the forest fell silent again, Elara's chest heaved. She looked at Kalen, expecting judgment or critique, but instead she saw something else: approval, respect, and something deeper, something that made her pulse quicken in ways she could not fully understand. "You have proven yourself," Kalen said quietly, "but there is one more challenge, one that will test not just your strength, but your heart." Elara's stomach twisted. She felt both fear and anticipation. What must I do?" she asked. "You must choose," Kalen said, his golden eyes locking onto hers. "Choose where your loyalty lies, what path you will walk. The bond with Riven is sacred, but the bond with me is destiny. One choice will shape your life, and the life of the pack." Her mind raced. Riven had trusted her completely, nuzzled her with warmth and loyalty. Kalen had claimed her, yet not with violence, but with the authority of centuries, of magic, of a connection she could not fully name. She felt torn, her heart caught between two forms of devotion, both demanding, both deserving. She knelt beside Riven, placing her hand gently on his fur. "Riven, I will always care for you," she whispered, feeling the truth of her bond. The wolf looked at her, understanding in his amber eyes. Yet even he seemed to sense the weight of the choice before her. Kalen stepped closer, his massive form moving with grace, the forest itself seeming to bend around him. "Do not fear your heart," he said softly. "It will guide you. But understand this: true strength comes from understanding, not fear. True courage comes from acceptance, not avoidance." Elara closed her eyes, letting her thoughts settle. She realized that saving Riven had changed her. She had faced danger, fear, and uncertainty, yet she had endured. She had learned the language of the forest, the rhythm of the pack, and the depth of her own courage. She was no longer the solitary healer she had been. She was part of something greater, something powerful. And the choice before her was not simply about love or loyalty. It was about destiny, about the future of the forest and the wolves she had come to protect. Opening her eyes, she met Kaelin's gaze. "I understand," she said. "I know my heart. I will not abandon the pack, nor the bond I have formed with Riven." For a heartbeat, the forest was silent. The wind held its breath, the leaves still, and even Riven paused in quiet acknowledgement. Then Kaelin lowered his massive head, pressing it gently against hers. The touch was not threatening, not possessive in the way she had feared. It was recognition, respect, and something far deeper. "You have chosen wisely," Kaelin said, voice quiet but filled with resonance. "Not all would understand the depth of this bond. Not all would endure the trials of the forest and remain true to themselves. You have shown strength, courage, and compassion. You are worthy." Riven nudged her hand, and she felt the warmth of both wolves around her, a connection that stretched beyond words, beyond reason. The forest itself seemed to pulse with approval, the ancient magic acknowledging her courage and her choice. Days passed, and the bond between human and wolves grew stronger. Kaelin taught her the deeper ways of the forest, the subtle language of the pack, and the rhythms of ancient magic that pulsed through the land. Riven remained by her side, loyal and playful. Yet he too accepted Kaelin's presence, understanding that the Alpha's claim was not a threat to their bond, but a part of the natural order. Elara herself transformed. She was no longer merely a healer. She had become a bridge between the human and wolf worlds, a keeper of balance and protector of life. She moved through the forest with grace and confidence, her heart open to the bonds she had formed and the destiny she had accepted. One evening, as the sun set and the forest was bathed in golden light, Kaelin approached her at the edge of the river. His eyes held the same intensity they always had, yet there was a softness now, a quiet warmth that made her heart ache with emotion. "You have come far," he said. "You have faced trials, danger, and uncertainty, and yet you remain true to yourself and to those you care for. That is rare and precious." Elara smiled softly. "I could not have done it without you, without Riven, without the forest guiding me." Kaelin's gaze softened further. He stepped closer, the power and presence that had once overwhelmed her, now tempered with understanding. "You have proven your heart," he said, "and in doing so, you have proven yourself to me. You are no longer merely a visitor in this forest. You are part of it, and part of the pack." Elara felt a swell of emotion she could not name: pride, relief, love, and belonging all at once. She knelt beside Riven, stroking his fur, and felt the quiet strength of the bond they shared. Then, she looked at Kaelin, the Alpha who had claimed her not through force, but through respect, guidance, and the recognition of her courage. You trust me?" she asked softly. Kaelin's eyes glowed in the fading light, and for the first time, he spoke without the weight of command, without the force of authority pressing down on her. "I trust you, Elara. And in trust, there is power. In understanding, there is freedom. You are free as any of us, within the bonds we share." Tears sprang to her eyes, not from sadness, but from the depth of emotion that filled her. She had faced fear, uncertainty, and danger. She had saved a life, and in doing so, she had entered a world of ancient magic, power, and destiny. And now, she belonged not just to Kaelin or to Riven, but to herself, and to the life she had chosen. Cliffhanger and poetic ending. As the moon rose that night, casting silver light across the forest, the three of them, Elara, Riven, and Kaelin, stood together at the river's edge. The water shimmered, reflecting the glow of the wolf's eyes and the quiet determination in hers. The forest whispered around them, alive with ancient magic and quiet approval. Elara felt the pull of destiny, the rhythm of the pack, and the strength of the bond she had forged. She looked at Kaelin, whose golden eyes held both power and tenderness, and whispered to herself, "I will walk this path, but my heart is no longer mine alone." The forest echoed her words, the wind carrying them into the night, a promise and a beginning. She had saved a life, faced trials, embraced destiny, and in the process, had discovered a love deeper than fear, stronger than magic, and eternal as the ancient trees around them.